Hi, Michelle here at Serenity Studios, and in this video I want to share with you some of the tools and resources I used in the making of Earth and Song. If you saw some of the things at speed in the time-lapse video and didn't get a chance to have a look closely or couldn't see what I was using and are interested, that's what the purpose of this video is. So let's get underway. So first let me dive into some of the brushes that I was using and some of the other mark making tools. So some of the earlier stuff I had, it's a big fat house painting brush. And the reason I love this is like using a 1-inch square of charcoal, or painting with a very long sort of lead stick attached to the other end, that there's a high degree of lack of control. And I love that about this brush, so that's good. And I also have a slightly smaller one that I also use. Another big brush that I used is much more, it's called the Big Brush. It's a brown nylon and it's a size 2, so it's quite a large face and it has a really clean edge to it, so I can get really nice straight edges if I want to, so there's a lot of control. So I switch up the size and also the level of control. You also probably saw me using a kitchen spatula, which is new to my kit, and I quite like it because it's the same as the big house painting brush, is that there's not nearly as much control. If I do want control, I'm using these two little catalysts. So that's a catalyst brand with a really sharp edge on it, which I really like. That's another of those options where you've got a degree of control and the smoothing out of surfaces of paint, which I really like for those two. I also used this Slick, it's a Tulip brand. Slick, it's actually a dimensional fabric paint. So where you saw me doing these white lines, scribbly lines, you can actually get a really fine line. It works really well. It comes out very smoothly, and you have a capacity to be extremely spontaneous with that. So I also have that in black. I used some of the Daler-Rowney FW acrylic artist ink, the black I think I used in this one, or Payne's Grey, and you've got an ability to drip, and then I use the spray bottle on the acrylic ink. So I like mixing up heavy bodied, fluid and acrylic inks all in this sort of range of acrylic paints that I'm using. And the other paint that I did use was, I used a couple of stencils. This one was a bought stencil with the alphabet on it, and I used Liquitex spray paint in the white, titanium white of this. I love the capacity to get a kind of an edge and a quick spray with the spray paint, but I also used a hand cut stencil for that ladder design that I used with the red at one point in the painting, and that's just using the cover off a report that's got a bit of robustness to it and hand cutting it using a scalpel or an artist blade. So there's some of the things that I used in terms of mark making, and I quite like mixing them up. The other aspect that I wanted to cover, which was something that I only started, this is the first time I tried it on a scale in this painting, this series of paintings, is using handmade papers, hand-coloured papers, should I say. So I used a cream or an ivory colour painted tissue that I then drew on with some designs with pencil and Inktense pencils and also graphite pencils. And the other material that I hand painted was just a premium bond flip chart paper. So it's 80 GSM, and I painted it in a few colours. So I've got a range of these. This was actually out of a sketch pad. So I'm using probably paper that's not super high quality, but painting it with a block colour and I then cut those shapes. So that's where these shapes came from, and I used I hand painted the red, and then, which you will see in the time-lapse video, but then I also decided I wanted it more like the hand-cut collage pieces, so I overlaid it with a red shape that I hand painted on paper, cut, and then glued. So the glue that I use, a couple of different types of glue. I've got the Atelier binding medium, and I also use acrylic medium by Golden. I think that just about covers it in terms of some of the tools and materials. My paints, in terms of the acrylic paint that I use, I'm pretty agnostic about brands, except that my go-to is Atelier if I can use those. They are an Australian-made acrylic paint, so I like using them, but I also have Liquitex Basics, and I have Goldens and a range of other cheaper brands that I mix in. So I hope you enjoyed. If you've got any questions about materials, resources, and tools, I did forget one. Here you go. That was the one. That's the trowel. Okay, so the last one I want to include in terms of mark making is this trowel that I bought from the hardware store. It's just a margin trowel for a tiler, and I had to play with it. I've used it a couple of times. This was sort of the main first go I had with the trowel, and I like the sort of lead off edge that it gives in terms of a really rough edge. The base of these canvases had quite a lot of texture, so when you skim over the surface with some acrylic paints, you get that texture coming through, which I really like. Okay, that is the end. I hope you enjoy. If you've got any questions, please post them below and I'll seek to get back to you. Bye for now.